Audio Jungle.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Off the Cuff session here with me, Joey Rasdien. If you like the previous episodes, please hit the like button, subscribe, and leave us comments in the comment section. Today, I am fortunate enough to be able to. I met him a couple of times. I met him once at the airport. He was one of the nicest dudes that knew so much about cricket, so much about my family. I was very surprised. And all-round good, nice guy that did so much for multiracial sports, racial sports. Uncle Dev, how do you say your surname, right?
Whichever way you want to. Govindjee is the easiest.
Yeah, Govindjee.
That's it.
And your first name?
Well, everybody calls me Dev, but it's Devdas.
Yes, that's the one. Devdas Govindjee, ladies and gentlemen. A guy that played with cricket with Basil de Oliveira. He played against no one can hide. And he played with my uncle. Actually, he played against my uncle. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that stories now. He says that I mustn't call him Uncle Dev. It's just, I can't not call him Uncle. He's like the same age as my uncles and my father, so I can't now just call him by his real name, by his short name. So if you don't mind, me continuing calling you Uncle Dev. Is that fine?
That's fine, if you're happy with that.
Excellent. So Uncle Dev, tell us. I'm doing the series of all the people that's from PE, specifically from Galvindale, but you also from PE. Where from PE are you from?
Well, my links with Galvindale go back a long, long way because everything happened in Galvindale. And whilst I grew up and was born, and my father was born in the center of the city, virtually 5 minutes from the city hall, we were booted out in around about 1969. And we ended up in Malabar, which was then the so-called Indian area. And Malabar is up the road from Galvindale. And then even before that, all our sport was played in Galvindale. So most of our time, and I played, as you know, I played tennis provincially. So tennis courts were in Galvindale, cricket in Galvindale. My table tennis was at the Galvindale Community Center. So everything, Galvindale was the hub of sport for non-racial sport during that period.
And tell us, I interviewed recently. I interviewed Bravo Jacobs, and he had so much to say about you and what an influence you had on the decisions he made. And I think you guys played together for the World 11 against you played for a select team of South African Invitational against the World 11 in 1976. I want to know from your mouth, why would you play with the white people at the time when it was when Sekos and when we tried to have a multiracial sport at the time?
Well, I think the idea was, remember, we were all non-racial at heart, and we are still non-racial at heart. The 1976 International Wonders that came along, it was a decision by the Eastern Province Cricket Association at that time. So when they announced the arrival of this team, and the Eastern Province Cricket Association said they had selected a few people, Bravo Jacobs, Neville Francis, myself in Port Elizabeth, players in Cape Town, players in Johannesburg, and that we were selected to play. I played 2 matches, and the whole sort of idea behind it from their side was that this was the prelude to normalizing cricket in South Africa. So under that pretense, we took part. And of course, within a year and a half, I decided that it wasn't for me. And I went back and played under the SACOS umbrella, and even represented, I played at the SACOS Festival of 1982. So naturally, it was an attempt at that time. Many of us felt later that we had erred. And I think by coming back to SACOS, it showed that our intentions were honorable. We moved on from there. We learned. And what we had learned from that experience was also that, how vast the disparities were in what we were accustomed to and what was happening on the other side. So there were lessons to be learned. And also, you know, a lot of us were held responsible for what the actions we took. There's no running away from that. And I think we were man enough to say, sorry, we thought that we were doing the right thing. And many still felt that they did the right thing, and they remained on that side, as you know. They continue to play their cricket. You know, I was also playing provincial tennis and table tennis. And at that stage, I felt my allegiances had to be, you know, with Sakos, and I came back.
I want to know how did they approach you guys? Because it was because non-racial sport at the time was non-existent. So how did they approach you guys? And did they dangle a carrot, or did they make certain promises? Or because I just can't fathom. I can't think on how you would have been approached. Because I asked Uncle Bravo the same question. How what? Because I think what I'm trying to get at is you had all the best intentions at heart, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So and all the non-white players at the time had all the best intentions at heart, right? But clearly from the other side, that wasn't the case. And we can look back now and say clearly it wasn't the case. And why would you think they did it at the time?
Well, as I said, you know, there was no approach from our side. It was a mere selection. So it's like any team being selected. We had no financial benefits. We had no financial gain. There was no monetary benefit to us, you know, in that form that we dangling a carrot. You're going to get X amount of money if you come over. No, you are selected to play. I was selected for two teams, the South African President's 11 and then the South African Merit 11. The first team was sort of the senior South African so-called white players at that stage. And the second was the up-and-coming, you know, white South African players. So 2 matches, and we were merely selected. The decision was then, this is what's happening. And I remember a long chat with one of the international wonders players who was himself very, very concerned about whether they were doing the right thing. And I'm not sure if you remember Glenn Turner, who was he was the New Zealand opening batsman. Yeah, and he was one of the concerned players who actually met with me and said, listen, we came up here because we are trying to help South African cricket to get what we think is the way forward. So they were also under the same, you know, illusions of whether they're doing the right thing. So it's not only the concern of our side, from our side, the concern was on their side also. Should they be here? Unlike the rebel tours that came thereafter. You know, they were totally on monetary, I think, incentives. And they might have been the same here. But I think there were a lot of players in that team who were very concerned about whether they were doing the right thing.
Okay, no, lekker. So, and how was that experience? Well, lekker.
No, I don't know. I don't think it was lekker, Joey. I think, how do you expect people to walk onto St. George's Park? You know, where we grew up. I mean, I grew up in St. George's Park. I played all my sport in that area. That's my neighborhood, you know, and expect you to go without any preparation, without having any idea, and get thrown the ball. And there you have the 2 Chapel brothers at the crease when you're given the ball. And it's the first time you're playing at a level where you're not sure what to expect. Whether we came out of it, you know, well enough or not, I mean, the record books can show that. But to expect us to perform under those conditions, it's almost an impossibility. I look back and I think, how did my arm even go over, you know, to bowl that first delivery? You must have been petrified.
You see, that's and I'm so glad you brought that up, because one can say the same things is still happening right now. Like, if you didn't go to Grey College or Dale or Bishops, and all of us, and you stayed all your life in Kailicha, or you stayed all your life in Katanga, and then all of a sudden you have to go play at St. George's Park, yet that psychological barrier is a huge thing. So you might not do as well as your talent, as you might not do your best. You have much more talent, but because you're so
Yes.
overwhelmed, people discount that. And
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
it's happening now.
Yes, I think that's a very important point. You know, we've reached the point now in South Africa. I don't know how many years later. You know, and I'm listening to all these players, the actual Princes and Alviro, people who I've seen come through the system as a match referee, and seeing the issues they are faced with at the moment. And you wonder whether, when we had the normalization of sport, when we did come together eventually, whether we didn't do something wrong. And there's a lovely line. I want to refer you to a line in the person I respect, the people I respect the most, Andre Odendaal and Krish Reddy, you know, in their book that they've written. There's one line that I want you to think about, and I think this sums up the whole thing. It says the structures changed more quickly than mentalities.
Yes.
Listen very carefully to that. And that comes from the divided country. Structures changed more quickly than mentalities. So we were changing structures because we were over eager to get this thing to work. But we forgot that the paradigm shift involves people's mental approach to what they were in for.
Yes, I agree with that totally. It's your point of reference. You have a certain
Absolutely.
point of reference. And if you get to a new point, if you get to a new situation, you're still going to react the same way you reacted all this time because of your point of reference. And the point of reference did not change. The way we see things did not change. We still saw the same way. Like, unfortunately, Ali Baha, and despite what he did for cricket, still saw non-white players not up to white player standard, even though they're more talented. It's just a point of reference.
Yes, absolutely. You know, you remind me of when I was convener of selectors at Eastern Province Cricket, and I had players like Shafiq and all those guys who were coming into the system. And my advice to them at that time was, listen, you can't perform 100%. They're gonna drop you if you perform 100%. You actually must perform 200%, you know?
Yes.
Because remember in the initial stages when we appeared on TV, next to our name there were blanks because we had no history. And there are still people who don't recognize the history and what we have, you know, and what we have done and where we come from. And I think this is important. And we don't hold a lot of them responsible, but by now they should make an effort to say, what is the history of these players? You know, before we make comments about their cricket and their cricketing background. The history of black cricket in South Africa goes back a long way, you know. EP can be proud because even when I look at the height of Sakos, you look at the scorecards in those books. We played a non-racial team because we had the Majolas, we had you know, the Pornos, we had Toba Williams, we had Seppo Kadi, we had all these people in the Eastern Province team. Many other provinces struggled to achieve what we did at that stage.
Yeah, I remember. I'm just reading this one here against Transvaal. Abrams, Hendricks, Francis, Wachmania, Wilson, Hendricks, Abrams, F. Abrams, Williams, France, all these guys playing against my uncle in him.
Yes.
Soli Chotia. For two things. For the people that don't know who's Uncle Dev. Uncle Dev is like a legend in Sakos sport, in non-racial sport. And he played, as he said, tennis, and he played table tennis, and he played cricket. And he's a match referee. And you traveled all the world from match referee. And as you heard, he was also a EP selector. And we've done some research here. And I asked Uncle Tiffy about you. And Uncle Tiffy said you were a very jovial guy.
Uncle Tiffy, I still am, I think. Yes, I know that. I know. We spoke about that when I met you in Windhoek, by the way. On the streets, if you remember.
Yes, yeah, you were a match
refereeing there,
and some other team, some Namibia and
intercontinental match.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, So coming back to, I just wanted our viewers to know that I'm speaking to a legend here, and I've been going through the scorebooks and stuff. That game where Rowan Kanai scored 188, Uncle Tiffy actually took your wicket, isn't he?
Oh, he did. It wouldn't have been the first time.
He was like a spin bowler and stuff.
Oh,
So
he was a
yeah,
legend.
so now this thing about Galvin Dale, there's this and I think Eastern Province people in general, whether it's white, black, colored, or Indian, they have this way of seeing the world, and they have this. I don't know if it's called discipline. Like if you look at Ashel Prince and Shafiq Abrams and Russell Domingo and yourself and Bravo Jacobs, there's this thing where you have the talent, but it's your mindset that let that talent come out. And that's what I'm trying to investigate. Where does that mindset come from, and what would you attribute that mindset to?
A very strong community approval of your success, a very strong community approval. In other words, in your area, you were looked upon and admired for what you did, whether it was on the cricket field, on the soccer fields, uh, baseball, softball. PE people go out and support each other in the non-white, so-called non-white areas those days. All sport we supported because we were proud of those players that came from within our structures and we wanted to see them succeed. So that's why Galvindale, as I said, once we were all moved to the so-called northern areas, that became our life. And we devoted ourselves to going out there to make sure that we played the game, and those who didn't play the game administered the game very well. In all your talks, you have been mentioning names like Claude Simon, and you had Claude Simon in cricket and in soccer. You had the Boya Chetties, the Valentine Blinks. You had the people in tennis. They made sure that our structures were good, that our administration was strong. And therefore, we were proud to represent. When you put on that blazer and you wore that tie, you know, that's all you played for in any case. And that made you proud for your EP. That black and red was a strong incentive for every youngster in our province.
So you were subconsciously creating heroes, not even knowing that you're creating heroes. It's like a point of reference type of thing that um, you had all these players to look up to, and you want to emulate that, and and if you have this talent, you work on it. Um, do you think there's a lack of that right now? Because what you just told me now is that you had like homegrown heroes. So if you can't be a hero in your own city, you'll never make it outside of your own city. And that's how I understood that comments right now. Um, you were one of the people that all other people at the chief looked up to. Who would you say you looked up to?
Oh, I looked up to many in our communities. When I started my cricket, there was a team called Southend United, led by Philip Sneyman, who I still consider probably the best captain I've played under. You know, we had Morris Wilson, we had Neville Francis on the tennis courts. You know, we had John Boyson, who went over to play at Wimbledon after David Samai went over to play. And the community raised funds to make sure that he gets to Wimbledon, like they did for Basil de Oliveira in Cape Town. They raised funds. People like Benny Bansda, who was instrumental in getting Basil over, you know. And to us, we were looked up to all these players, whether it was in the hockey field, soccer. I mean, I played a bit of first league soccer also. And, you know, with Paladins, and I think Bravo in his discussion with you raised Paladins as one of the teams. We looked up to those players, you know, that were playing during that time. And they were our heroes because we ran around the streets of Southend. We ran around the streets of the northern areas, and we were there in the middle and in the hub of admiring those players and wanting to be like them.
So that's one thing. So I've been when I spoke to Ashel Prince and Robin Peterson specifically, and Garnet as well, they were speaking about a discipline. There was with the fun that they had, and there was an outlet for them. They spoke about this discipline. Um, did you teach there in Calvindale?
No, I taught I started both schools in Malabar, you know, my first two, and then I went over to the northern areas. I was the lecturer at the Dawa College of Education in the history department. My roommate, my office mate at Dawa was Danny Jadan.
Oh wow, yeah. That you mean he? Oh, Danny and Uncle Max.
That's right. They were both Dawirians.
Oh wow, okay, lekker. So yeah, there's another example. Like strong administrators, Kaya Majola, Gerald Majola, um, uh, 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 Russell is now Domingo, Russell Domingo, Tutti.
Tony Peterson, Casey
Yeah,
March, you name
yeah.
them in our communities. You know, we had plenty of wonderful administrators.
So I was coming back to this discipline story and how to create heroes within your own community. You spoke about the facility. What changed now? What is the difference now in Galvindale? Or because I'm just using Galvindale as an example. Um, to now, so back then, Galvindale had this sports center, and it was conducive to produce sports people, and the community supported it. Um, what do you think is happening now in Galvindale that they're not producing as much, but they're still producing? Like Ronwen Williams, he's like the Bafana goalkeeper. The Banyana goalkeeper also is also from Galvindale. Kermit Erasmus from Galvindale, and that's currently like on world stages. Um, what do you think is the difference between then and now?
No, I think Galvin will continue to produce excellent sports people, and particularly now that they've got established club like Galvin Cricket Club, they've got a center, you know, and they've got the heroes that they've produced. I think what we're fighting against in all areas are probably the other attractions that are taking our children away from, and also from sport, and also the fact that the streets have been taken away from us. We played in the streets. Today, parents are reluctant to get their children into the streets for obvious reasons. And I think this is the thing that we've got to look at very seriously. The streets have been taken away from us. Unless the communities get their streets back, the children are not going to be out in the streets. They're not going to put the drums up. And they're not going to play cricket there, you know, and have their wickets and their fielders and their little tennis matches. And that to me is the crux of it. We are still going to produce and have them there, but they are forced indoors. They are forced onto the iPads. They're forced onto watching TV because it's not safe out there. So we have to create a safe environment. Galvindale had Rowan Crescent, it had Liebenberg Road, it had Martin Street. If you drove through those areas, there were matches being played, whether they were cricket, there was tennis courts, you know, children were playing in the streets. Highfield Road, for all that it had, people played sport in the streets.
Oh, and that's a huge thing actually, because I went to back to the place where I grew up, and I'm a grown man, and I was actually nervous walking in the street by myself. I was like, yo,
Exactly.
this is where I grew up, and wow, there's a type of fear, and that's Reveille. I can't even
Yes.
imagine how's it to walk in Hanover Park, for instance, or Katanga, for instance, because
Yes.
it's not as bad. So tell us about how did you get into match referee? How did you first become an umpire? Because you know Uncle Tiffy is also
No.
old. You know, he's
Yeah,
like
look,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
Match referees are never umpires, are seldom umpires. Match referee is a
Okay,
totally different position. So, you know, so we don't confuse the two. In South Africa, we have a few who have been umpires and then became match referees. But worldwide on the elite panel, none of them have ever umpired because it's a different function. The umpires work together and we actually oversee the umpires as match referees. So they're the first people that we work with. And then totally oversee whatever happens at a game. And my sort of announcement in coming into match refereeing, I first worked for SuperSport for 5 years as a
yeah,
cricket commentator from 2000.
yeah.
And then I applied to Cricket South Africa for the match refereeing position, which I got in 2005, 2006. And I'm currently still a match referee for Cricket South Africa. But by 2009, I was on the ICC's panel. They created a regional match referees panel. And we were four of us working around the world, doing intercontinental matches, featuring all the associate countries. World Cup qualifiers, women's World Cup qualifiers. And yeah, so that took me to places, but Dubai obviously being the headquarters from which we operated.
So, and you enjoy the job because you played first class cricket for like 12 years, 11 years?
No, more than that. I made my debut in 1968 and I played till 1984 with a few years, obviously, with that International Wonders interruption. Yeah, so I played right until 84 and then I played club cricket even near to my 50th birthday.
Oh, yeah, you guys don't give up. Yes, I remember Uncle Tiffy when we were playing. Uncle Tiffy was still playing, and I was like 12. I like playing first team, and Uncle Tiffy is still bowling there. And you're like, "Ish, this topi, why is he still playing cricket here?"
Well, that Transvaal team he played with had some legendary players. I mean, Tiffy, Morris Garda, Hussein Ayub, Charlie Chotia, you know, some amazing Abdul Bamji, Chicken Bamji, some really good Musa Mangera, some really good players.
Yeah. Uncle Abu Manak. Yeah.
Yes, oh yeah, absolutely. Amadi Gabru, Hira Jeram, who turned the ball more than anybody else I've ever seen, you know. And yes, there's some magnificent, Neil Edwards, some good players there.
Uncle Kiki.
Yes, Kati, yeah.
Yeah, and who was the other?
And the Rubich guys came a bit just after that.
Rubich.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was. Amisanta is a madrasa teacher actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then my other uncle, Peter Hashim, also played a couple of years with him as well. Yeah, but he wasn't as prolific as Uncle Tiffy. He was more a soccer player at the time with Iso Pahad in him and stuff. So, where the direction South African cricket is taking right now, do you think we on a correct trajectory, or do you think that, because the point that you made from the book is that we changed the structures but we didn't change the mindset. Now it seems like the mindset is being dragged along because the structures has been changed now, so now the mindset needs to also be changed. Do you think we're on a right direct trajectory?
It's a very difficult time, you know. I think players are now finding their voices. Players are saying that when we asked for playing fields to be leveled, we didn't only want the playing fields leveled, you know. We wanted everything else that goes with it. And what we thought, I mean, we were all part of these structures. You know, I served on many of them, and we all thought that we were heading in the right direction. And we enjoyed watching the Proteas, we still do. And suddenly we find that things weren't as good as we thought. And therefore, what comes out is there was a superficially agreement that's going on. And players are now saying, listen, you know, this is not the way it should be. I've been unhappy here and I've been unhappy there. And what we want to do is to make sure that people are happy when they play sport. If you're not happy when you're playing sport, the whole essence of sport is lost. Aside from the fact that it's a professional game and people are making a living out of it. But we also need to be sure that we're moving in the right direction. And I think that the decisions we take, you know, over the next few seasons are going to be crucial, not only for Cricket South Africa, but for world cricket, because a strong Proteas team and a strong strong cricket setup in South Africa is essential. It's like having a strong West Indian team, you know, a strong Indian or Pakistan team. It's important for world cricket. And therefore, everybody's got to sit down. Everybody's going to say, let's start all over again and say, listen, where did we go wrong? You know, and how do we're never going to change everybody's mindset, Joey. You know that. You know, it's an ingrained thing. People are people, and they will tell you, I'm okay with this. But, you know, it's like Francois Pienaar who went down on his knee. Now, suddenly people are, we're finding out now that all his 1995 teammates are not happy with him. You know, and that becomes a revelation later. So we're never going to change everybody, but we must be happy that the people I'm working with, that there's honesty, that when he tells me that I'm selecting you, you know, I'm going to select you because I think you deserve to be there, not be told afterwards, you know, that you only selected because, you know, we felt that we were doing the right thing to please a certain part of our structure or a certain section of our community. No player should ever be feeling that, not at this stage of our cricketing, set up in South Africa. The whole word of tokenism, of being a player that is just representing us because he's making up numbers. No player should be there. Yeah, that you can't play like that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. As recent as, and he didn't do it on purpose, but recently, as recent as last year, where Faf du Plessis said, no, Temba Bavuma must go back and go prove himself in domestic cricket. And this is a subconscious thing. I don't think he meant it in a bad way. But if it was a white player, it wouldn't have been, he must go back and prove himself. It would have been, no, we support him. He's just been going through a rough time. He's still on the fringes. And that talk, you could see that talk was like, no, it's that mindset thing that you said, we can't change. The mindset needs to change. The structure changed, but the mindset didn't change. That speech that interview in itself was like, and it's you can't blame him or you can't say he's a bad guy, but it's just because subconsciously, be it was Temba Bavuma, if it was Jacques Kallis, he would have been like, oh, we must. Oh, what happened here?
No, that's all right.
No. If it was Jacques Kallis, it would have been a different story. But because it's Temba Bavuma, no, he must go prove himself and stuff. So that needs to change. Like right now, there's enough players, black, white, Indian, colored, Chinese, Greek. And there's a Greek player that's scoring runs in domestic cricket. Angelo Aganatio from Titans. He's scoring runs like it's nothing. So there's enough players right now to select from, where you can select any person and say, no, this guy is not a quota player. Here's his stats. Because that's the thing. The stats proves everything.
But they should just be players. I mean, they should just be players. You're selecting a cricket team, and we should get to that point where wherever he is, I'm here as part of the team, and I want to be in the team as a player. And therefore, I think Robin Peterson made an interesting point the other day about the dynamics in the dressing room needs to be a happy one. And you cannot be sitting there and saying, I'm looking at myself and saying, I'm one of three. And they 2 of 4, and therefore there's one gap there that needs to be filled in, but it can only be filled in by X, Y, and Z. So that doesn't create a healthy environment. So we've got to be very sensitive about the way we go about things. And we've also make sure that we don't lose players. We cannot afford to lose anybody, no matter where he comes from, no matter if he's South African, we want him to be South African to play for the Proteas.
So, Uncle Dev, tell us, to give us one of your favorite moments as a player, one of your favorite moments as an administrator currently, that you're doing now as a match referee, and just to tell the people out there how it is, or for the up and coming match officials and people that want to go into match refereeing or umpiring, any words of advice for that?
Oh, there's so many favorite moments as a player. Probably when you get picked for your province for the first time as a young 19-year-old, that's probably your first favorite moment. And in that tournament, I played 2 Dadabai tournaments, which unfortunately they don't record in the stats, as you know, 68 and 1970, which was the last one, and then we moved over to the home and away system. 68 was a memorable one because I was a youngster playing against Transvaal, and I think Aslam has got this in his book that he's written about Transvaal cricket. We were playing against Transvaal, and we were like 9 down and needing not too many to win, and I was batting with Philip Snyman. And then he hit a 6, and we needed, I think, 3 more, and he blocked one delivery. And next ball, he tried the same shot, which would have gone, and there was a tall, I think it was Abu Aswat, who stuck out a hand, and the ball stuck in his hand, and we were left desperately close to beating the, Transvaal with the team at that particular time. And there was I shedding huge tears walking off the field with my captain in my very first tournament. And I thought that always stays with me as as a very memorable moment. Later on in my career, I think tennis, I had a lot of highlights, but we're more interested in cricket.
Speak about
Match,
tennis. Yeah. Speak about
well,
tennis.
I played a lot of tennis and played for Natal also when I was at university, and I enjoyed playing interprovincially until I got bored. I think the key to a lot of our sport at that stage was try to create incentives to keep us in the game. And because there were very few incentives, and maybe Sackbock was also at that stage not did not give us colors. And to me, that's one of my regrets, you know. And probably Uncle Tiffy will tell you the same. And you know, we never wore a green blazer, and up to today, we feel that even if it wasn't green, that a Sackbock blazer would have been something that would have made us feel that, and we could have told our children and grandchildren that we played at the highest level for the association we represented. And many years later, I think in the very late 80s, they started to give out South African Cricket Board colors. But by then we were past, and maybe they should have done some you know, retrospective awarding of colors to players who they believe might have achieved them. So that is naturally a regret. But later on, you move on, and highlights, doing 3 IPLs as a match referee, going to India. The first time I walked on the field at India, I was in tears because my mother was born in India. And I felt if she was living, how proud she would have been seeing her son officiating at an amazing event on what we call, you know, motherland. And she, you know how they were, they supported India until the end. And we are strong South African supporters. But to her and my dad, it would have been a big moment when I walked in on the fields of, you know, the major stadiums of India, be it Eden Gardens or in Mumbai or Chennai. And then I did 4 CPLs, which is the Caribbean Premier League. And I did 4 finals, and there were some incredible games with people like Andre Russell and Chris Gale and the guys from around the world who come there. And I think, you know, yes, exactly. So when you watch those highlights, and to know that I've done 4 of them, you know, over 4 years, spending 7 weeks at a time in the West Indies, people don't understand. Yeah, I was listening to your talk with Aldine, and you know, people don't understand that when you get to the West Indies, there's no such thing as the West Indies. Those are proud, independent countries. So the first time I went there, and I was walking in Jamaica, and I had 2 umpires appointed, who were 3 umpires, and we were walking down the street. We were actually going to Chris Gale's restaurant. It's called Triple Century. And on the way I told them, oh, I'm so happy, you know, I've got 3 locals with me. They all looked at me and said, who's local? None of them were Jamaican. And then it dawned on me that the one guy is a proud guy, you know, from Guyana. The other guy is from Barbados, so he's proud. And the other guy is from Trinidad. So to them, they're independent countries. There's no such thing. The only time you hear West Indies is when they play cricket, or they also have a university of the West Indies because they have campuses on a few of the islands. Other than that, you learn quickly that there's huge competition because they are independent countries, you know, like running in the Olympics for Jamaica or Barbados, you know.
An interesting point came up with Aldine, where he was speaking about how we think we have quota systems in our selection. There was a time in West Indies where if they can't have more than 3 players from a certain island, or they must have 1 from Leeward Islands and 1 from Guyana and 1 from Trinidad and Tobago and 1 from Barbados.
I listened to that when you asked him about that. I was quite surprised, actually. I was not aware of that. I caught up with Aldine a few times when I was there, and we spent a lot of time together. He's a wonderful man and a great professional. You know, we had the West Indians down here when I played, if you remember. The stage when Sagby brought out Duncan Carter and Keith Barker and Ryan Kanai, who I bowled to in Johannesburg, and of course John Holder played for the Western Province.
What was I going to say again? I just wanted to. I lost my trail of thought now. It was something to do with here's it. Jean Baptiste. So you met Sir Garfield Sobers as well.
Yes, interestingly enough, on the very anniversary, the 50th anniversary of Garfield Sobers hitting the 6 sixes, we had a CPL match in Barbados, and I was told that they're going to have him come on. So as match referee, we had to rearrange the players lining up, and so we met him, and I made sure after that I went and spent some time with him. And yes, and he comes quite often to the matches when they're in Barbados, because he's still looking very, very good and very fit. I met a lot of those, Andy Roberts and, you know, Curtly Ambrose, and they all have a role to play in CPL at different levels.
So you lucky, man. You played with Basil de Oliveira. How is it to share a change room with him?
Well, you know, again, when we were totally unaware of what things were like on the other side, and we were quite happy to play and using our natural ability and our talents, and we played. When Basil came along, it's like Garnet told you in your interview, you know, first of all, he looked at everybody and he said, listen, if you can't play cricket, at least look like a cricketer. You know?
Yeah.
And you don't come here with your black belt and your black socks and, you know, and exchange a box on your way when you're going out to bat, you know. So he made it very clear, and he brings that professionalism into the game. And so the 2 seasons that we had Basil with us, I mean, it just transformed Eastern Province cricket, because we had great people on paper, but the minute half our team were already out when we were in the dressing room, because we were now playing Transvaal, you know, we were playing Chotia and Ayub and Bamji. So you're 3 down before you start the game, you know, and the same thing when we're playing against Western Province. So the whole mindset, again, it's about the mind. We had to strengthen the fact that we're good on paper, but we now need to apply ourselves to show that we can play to that potential. And Basil showed us. And when we played with him, we were not in awe. We were just learning as we went along. This is how they do it. I mean, this man has played Test cricket for England. And here he was, one of us, sharing our dressing rooms. There were no dressing rooms, no shower facilities, you know. And yet he came down to our level, but he was there teaching us what we were totally unaware of, how the game should be played and how it is being played in the rest of the world.
Great. That's a great story. But Eastern Province won lots of Hawa Bowls. I remember when Andre Peters, I think in the late 80s, early 90s, Eastern Province had quite a solid team.
No, we won it for the first time. We won it for the first time in 78, 79. That's the team I played with. Yeah, we went up to Newcastle, a lovely story in itself. You know, we went from Port Elizabeth, and our driver, who was from Utrecht, said he knows a shortcut to Newcastle. So we had a breakdown in a place called Oogie. I still don't know where Oogie is, or Oogie. All right.
And yeah, I know where Oogie is. Okay. That's by Vanderbilt Park.
Wherever it is. Anyhow, we went 21 hours later. We drove onto the field at Newcastle, and we beat Natal to win the Hawa Bowl for the first time. A 21-hour journey in that rickety bus, which they called a luxury bus, you know. And we won the Hawa Bowl for the first time. So 78, 79, that's the first time Eastern Province had won any national trophy.
Oorgies, Oorgies is like in between Paris. It's like on the.
I think it's Oogie or something, UGIE, Oogies or something like that. Yeah. But anyhow, we had a breakdown somewhere there.
Yeah. So you won a Hawa Bowl in 78, 79.
78, 79. Yep.
Lekker.
Yeah, that's the first time.
And you know, I just got jealous of you now. You said that you were match referee for 4 CPL finals, just to go to the West Indies, or just to go to St. Kitts and Nevis, for instance. That is like, man, people don't understand how lekker that is, because you go to a place where there's only black people, basically, like, and we live, and they're living the life. It's like, although there's poverty, but everybody is so calm and so lekker. And you
CPL is called cricket played louder. So now you know what that means. I mean, it's IPL has its own vibe, and CPL has its own vibe. And CPL is just noisy, those steel bands, the dancers, and it's just one big party. And of course, the cricket is serious because it's a major event. But it changes from every. But again, it's you're right. It's totally different in Guyana. Trinidad has its own atmosphere. It's just all red. If the final is in Trinidad, the tickets are sold black market. You won't believe it. You can't get a ticket. I mean, people queue outside the hotels to try to get tickets from players and match officials because it's just total fanaticism about the game, you know. And then on the other hand, I must tell you one other story that I think is very important. My passion is with the associate countries. And I think not enough is said and spoken about what happens in Nepal, what happens in Hong Kong, what happens in the UAE, what happens in Africa. I've been a match referee right up from South Africa, right up to Rwanda. And you must see the stadium in Rwanda. I mean, people must understand that the passion for the game is growing. The ladies teams in those countries, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda, know the game inside out, Joey. You won't believe it. When they sit and talk to you, they talk to you about cricket and how the game is being played. And their desire is to play internationally. When I went to Nepal, an 18,000-seater stadium, but no stadium. It's just grass. People sit next to each other, all right? And there's not even one bench where they can sit on. And then we look at our stadiums and I think, man, we don't understand how much, when you talk about privilege, we've got so many things. We are so much more privileged. They don't have a bench. They don't have a seat. They don't have a stand. And yet they're sitting totally there wanting to follow and support. Their players are like heroes. Their top players are like Tendulkars in India, the same there. They hero worship them there. You won't believe it. The ladies team were digging their own pitches. They were preparing their own fields manually, doing it by hand. The players.
Did a ladies team not play in the T20 World Cup?
That was the Thailand team. That's also, I had them also in the past, 7 years ago, and to watch them develop. Unbelievable, unbelievable. And that's where we need to focus. That's where our strength is going to be in world cricket in the future. Those are the countries with the passion.
Like Papua New Guinea. Did you go to Papua New Guinea?
Yeah, I didn't go there, but I've had their team in many tournaments. I've had unusual teams. I've had Vanuatu. I've had Fiji. I've had Sierra Leone. I've had teams that people don't even know that they've... I've been to America 3 times for cricket, in Los Angeles and in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, wow. I know Dane Pitt is going there. Dane Pitt
yes. Well, Rusty is playing for the American team now. Rusty Theron.
Yeah, oh, is he a citizen now?
Yes, he's a citizen there now.
Oh, Rusty Theron. Oh, Rusty Theron. Massacre. Uncle Dev. It was, I can speak to you the entire day and ask you so much questions, but shukran, thank you so much for joining us here on Off the Cuff. Ladies and gentlemen, there's legends out there, people that's got stories. Do you have a book out?
I'm busy with it.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, look out for the book that Uncle Dev is writing. I can't wait to read those books. I love history. I love all these things. And thank you for taking your time out on a Monday afternoon, actually, to speak to me. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Joey. It was a real pleasure and long overdue to have a chat with you. Thanks so much for what you're doing. We need to support your program.
Thanks, man. Did you hear, guys? Subscribe. Click subscribe. Off the Cuff, like, and turn on notifications. We are here. Thank you.